So on this day in 1990, Arsenal travelled to Old Trafford in what would become known as the Battle of Old Trafford. In this video, I look back on that game. Hello, I'm Richard and welcome back to my channel over and over again, which features everything to do with Arsenal. Now in this video, I just want to look back on this day, the 20th of October 1990, for a match that of course became famously known as the Battle of Old Trafford. Just before I get into all that, I just want to make sure that you are subscribing to my channel. If you like what I do, please click the subscribe button. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up as well, as it really does help it to grow. And if you've got any comments at all about maybe this particular match or anything to do with Arsenal, maybe back in the day or even now, please drop them in the comments box as well, because I do love to hear from you guys as well. So on this day then, the 20th of October 1990, Arsenal travelled away to Manchester United in a match that would become famously known as the Battle of Old Trafford, of course, because of that 21-man brawl in the second half. Now, Arsenal had started this particular season really well. We were still unbeaten going into this match, sitting in second place, 6 points behind Liverpool, who are also unbeaten as well. And Manchester United at that particular time were in sixth place in the league. Of course, they were the current FA Cup holders, having beaten Crystal Palace in the final the season before. This was, of course, a great Arsenal team. Who would go on to win the league title, losing just one match. One of my favourite ever Arsenal teams, actually, in history that I've seen. So the team that started that day, lined up at Old Trafford, was, I say, this really famous, fantastic side. So in goal was David Seaman, of course, who just bought that summer from Queen's Park Rangers to replace John Lukic. He's having a great season already early on in his Arsenal career. The back four was, of course, the famous back four. Lee Dixon at right back, Nigel Winterburn at left back, and Steve Bold and Tony Adams in the centre. The midfield was David Rocastle on the right, Anders Limpar on the left, of course, the Swedish winger. Again, he'd joined us that summer, had a brilliant impact already early in that season. And in the centre midfield was Paul Davies and Michael Thomas. And then up front, Alan Smith and Paul Merson. So what a fantastic Arsenal side that was. Anybody who was around at that time, will appreciate exactly how good that team was. The two subs for Arsenal that day were Perry Groves and David O'Leary. Of course, you could only name two subs in them days. You could only bring on two subs as well. The Manchester United side wasn't quite the great side that Man United would build in the early years of the Premier League. But you could see that some of the players were there already, and it was a process, if you like, for them. In goal was Les Sealey. Their back four was Dennis Irwin at right back, Steve Bruce and Gary Pallister at centre back. Clayton Blackmore was the left back. In midfield, they had Neil Webb was on the right, Lee Sharp on the left, and in the middle was Mike Phelan and Paul Ince. And up front was Mark Hughes and Brian McClare. The Man United's two subs that day were Mark Robbins and Lee Martin, who, of course, Lee Martin had scored the FA Cup final winner the season before. Now, the game itself wasn't actually a fantastically great game, if we're honest. Arsenal didn't even play that well, but back in them days, we could rely on the fact that our defence would generally keep a clean sheet. And if we could nick a goal, that quite often was enough to win us the game. And that was basically how this game planned out. Now, in the first half, Arsenal were attacking the away end. I don't know if you were there behind a goal that day, but it was an absolutely crazy atmosphere. It was absolutely packed as well. Just before half time was when we scored the goal. It was quite a controversial goal as well in many ways. It was a short corner routine. Paul Davies played the ball to Anders Limpar on the right hand side, and he curled the ball in from a very tight angle in towards the near post. Les Sealey, the goalkeeper, looked as though he'd got across and clawed it out, but it had crossed the line. Referee Keith Hackett pointed to the spot, and there was absolute mayhem in the away end, bodies flying everywhere, fantastic celebration. But of course, the game will be remembered not necessarily for that goal or the celebration, but for the incident that happened 15 minutes into the second half. Now, just for a little bit of history on this, Man United against Arsenal matches had become quite feisty, shall we say, over the previous couple of years. In 1987, of course, there was a game at Old Trafford where David Rocastle had been sent off for a foul on Norman Whiteside. He got a red card and it all kicked off there. And then, of course, the FA Cup game in 1988, where in the final minute, Brian McClare had smashed the penalty over the crossbar into the North Bank, of course, and Nigel Winterburn had a few words to say to him about that. And there was a few simmering feuds maybe between some of the players, and it all exploded. I say that the 59th minute of this match, Dennis Irwin, I believe it was, who who come in with a tackle on Anders Limpar, who reacted, and Nigel Winterburn came flying in, and then Brian McClare got involved with Winterburn and he started kicking him while he was on the floor. That of course set off pretty much every player got involved. In fact, the only player who didn't get involved was actually David Seaman. To be fair, we have to say that most of the players were simply trying to separate everybody, and they wasn't actually involved in any of the pushing and shoving as such. But it looked a lot worse than it was. It was all over in probably 25-30 seconds, and in the end, the referee Keith Hackett only ended up booking Nigel Winterburn and Anders Limpar, and he didn't actually book any Manchester United players at all, which seemed a bit strange. I mean, he could have probably booked 15 players, in all honesty, and I'm sure these days there would have been several red cards as well. But that was what happened there. The game obviously carried on, and you could sense there was a little bit of tension in the air, but Arsenal managed to hold on for the 1-0 victory, which proved to be a very important victory as well. But unfortunately, that was at the end of the story, because the FA decided that they needed to punish both clubs, and Arsenal and Manchester United were charged with failing to control their players and stuff like that. Now, because Arsenal had a charge hanging over them from the previous season, where there'd been a brawl after a match against Norwich, if you remember, at Highbury, where Arsenal scored a late winner, and it all kicked off in the penalty area that day. And because Arsenal had already had a charge like that against them, when the FA decided to dish out the punishments, Arsenal actually got a 2-point deduction. Very, very harsh penalty that was. Man United actually also had a 1-point deduction, which actually, to be fair, seemed actually probably even harsher on them when they hadn't had any previous, kind of issues with that in recent times as we had. But anyway, a 2-point deduction seemed very, very harsh, and it actually put us 8 points behind Liverpool at the time, which seemed a real big mountain to climb. But this Arsenal team, not only could they play football, but they knew how to fight and they knew how to battle, and they wasn't going to be put off by an 8-point gap. And of course, in the end, we would win the title that year, I say, losing just one match, which was away at Chelsea. It was ironic in a way that the return match against Manchester United at Highbury in May was actually the night where we were crowned champions. Liverpool lost earlier that day to Nottingham Forest, which gave us a title before we even had to play Manchester United. So they had to give us a guard of honour out onto the pitch, which was nice. And we won that game as well, 3-1, with an Alan Smith hat-trick as he won the Golden Boot. So, but going back to obviously that game at Old Trafford, I think it just, a lot of things come to my mind with that, really. First of all, how much more simpler the game was then. Both teams' players were 1 to 11. It was very defined positions. You didn't have false nines and number 10 positions and all that. You just had, a back four in midfield and 2 strikers. And it was nice and simple. And for me personally, it was probably more enjoyable actually as well. The whole experience of going to football, the terracing behind the goal, them sort of goal celebrations that we had that day is something that you don't get anymore. I mean, especially not now because we can't be in the stadium. But even when we are, you just don't get that anymore. It's a lot more of a watered down atmosphere, and it's probably not as good, not as enjoyable as a result of that, really, which is a shame. So it is a memory back maybe to simpler days, perhaps, in many ways. And probably more enjoyable as well. But of course, it was difficult not to enjoy this Arsenal team, fantastic team that of course won the title, losing just one match, so almost invincible, as the book title of course says. So that's that video there today, just looking back on this rather famous match, which happened 30 years ago today. It doesn't seem 30 years ago for us that were there, but it was. I say lots of changes have gone on in the meantime. So if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like my channel as well, please click the subscribe button. I've got lots of great stuff coming up actually this week. We've got the Europa League starts. We're playing away in Rapid Vienna, aren't we, on Thursday? So I'll be doing a preview of that game probably tomorrow. And then of course there's a big Premier League game on Sunday at home to Leicester, so I'll be doing a preview of that as well, probably towards the end of the week, maybe Friday. So stay tuned to all of that as well. And as well, if you missed my show last night, I had a good conversation with former Arsenal striker Isaiah Rankin. Really good show that was. If you haven't seen it yet, please check it out, because it's a real good insight into his career, not only his time at Arsenal, but his career after that as well. Plus also, of course, his thoughts on the current Arsenal team, his thoughts on the current situation in football with VAR and all that kind of stuff as well. So really interesting chat that was. So please check that out as well. And we're going to get him back on on the channel as well. I think he's coming back onto one of the Positive Arsenal podcasts soon as well, to talk about the upcoming games and stuff like that. So that'll be interesting as well. So again, just thanks to Isaiah, obviously, for his time last night. And I say, if you haven't watched the show, please do so. So that's that for now. I say stay tuned to the channel. Lots of good stuff coming up as we head towards a busy weekend. Actually, 2 big games at the end of this week. So hopefully we can bounce back from the Manchester City defeat with 2 victories. But obviously we'll see what happens. But I say stay tuned because I'll be previewing both of those 2 games very, very soon. And of course, in the meantime, as always, come on, you Gunners!